You can't bring him on this bus, the supervisor said later. But by then, it was too late. I'd already seen his face. And once you see a kid like that, standing in the rain, soaked to the bone, gripping a photo like it's the only thing holding them together, you don't forget. You don't keep driving. Detroit always felt colder after midnight. The streetlights along Jefferson Avenue buzzed overhead, casting pale halos over the puddled sidewalk. Wind pushed against the empty corners of the city, curling into alleys and slipping through cracked windows. Elena shifted in her seat. 45 minutes to go on her shift. Her lower back throbbed, her knees stiff from the long hours behind the wheel. Driving the night route was quiet, but not peaceful. It had its own kind of tension, the tension of silence, of what you might see when no one else is looking. She pulled the bus up to the last stop. Empty again. No one out at this hour, especially not in this part of town. She reached for her thermos, took a sip of lukewarm coffee, and glanced into the side mirror. That's when she saw him. Just a shadow at first. A small figure near the edge of the sidewalk, almost blending into the night. The rain slicked his hair flat against his forehead. He wore a thin jacket, too light for the weather, and his sneakers were soaked through. He wasn't moving. Just standing there. Elena squinted. A child? She leaned forward and flicked on the cabin lights. The glow spilled onto the pavement. The boy didn't step forward. He didn't even flinch. She opened the doors. The hydraulic hiss broke the silence. Cold out tonight, she said softly, not expecting a reply. Still, the boy didn't speak. He clutched something in his hand. A photo. She could barely make it out, but it looked like a girl, maybe his sister. Her stomach tightened. Protocol flashed through her mind. No unauthorized pickups. No exceptions. If she reported it, someone would come eventually. Maybe. But she'd been that child once. Not in the rain, but in a hospital waiting room at age 6, waiting for a mom who didn't come back for hours. People had walked by her. Nurses. Orderlies. No one asked. Until one person did. Where's your mom, Mijo? Elena asked gently. Nothing. His eyes stayed locked on the sidewalk. She could see now that his backpack was half unzipped, stuffed haphazardly. A Lunchable poked out of the side. Torn straps. He looked like he hadn't slept. The street behind him was deserted. Not a car in sight. Not a light on in the buildings nearby. No adult following. No one looking. Elena reached for the radio to call it in. Her fingers hovered over the mic. Then she stopped. She turned the dial down. Set the mic back on the hook. Come on, she said. You don't have to talk. Just get out of the rain. It took a moment. Then, slowly, the boy climbed the steps. Water dripped from his jacket, pooling near his sneakers. He sat in the first seat, right behind her. Silent. The photo was still in his hand. Up close, she saw it clearer now, a school picture of a girl with curly hair and a gap-toothed grin. On the back, scribbled in pencil, was a single word, Maribel. Elena started the bus again. No one else was on the route. No one waiting. She pulled away from the curb and kept driving. Her hands were steady, but her heart wasn't. She glanced in the mirror every few seconds. The boy sat still. He didn't speak, didn't ask where they were going. But he didn't try to leave, either. By the time they reached the depot, it was nearly 1 a.m. Rain still came down in sheets. Elena pulled the bus into the garage and turned off the engine. We're safe here, she said quietly. The boy looked at her for the first time. His eyes were dark and tired. But he nodded. Elena got up and handed him her extra hoodie from the locker. Then, carefully, she peeled a pack of crackers from her lunch bag and handed it to him. He hesitated, then took them. No thank you. Just the quiet crunching of crackers in the back of a silent bus. She sat back down. Rubbed her temples. This wasn't going to go unnoticed. Cameras were always running. She could already hear dispatch, asterisk, you brought a minor where? Asterisk. But the boy was here. Real. Cold. Alone. And someone needed to see him. To actually see him. She looked over her shoulder again. We'll figure it out tomorrow, she said. He didn't respond. But he held the photo to his chest like a shield. And in that moment, Elena knew one thing with complete clarity. She couldn't just leave him there. There's a certain kind of quiet that only happens just before dawn, not peace, exactly, but pause. As if the world itself is deciding whether to keep turning. That's the quiet that held the inside of Elena's bus. The boy was asleep now. Curled up on the long seat with the hoodie balled beneath his head. One hand still clutching the photo. His small frame rose and fell with each breath. Elena sat 2 rows back, watching over him. She hadn't driven home. She couldn't. Not yet. The depot was nearly empty. Just her bus and the night mechanic, whistling somewhere in the distance. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. It wasn't comfortable. But it was safe. For now. Elena checked her phone. 2 unread texts from her daughter. One from dispatch. She sighed. Back stiff, heart heavier than it had been in a long time. Not from the boy. From the knowing. She knew how this would go. She knew the questions, the tone, the quiet judgment behind every stare. It had followed her for years. She had been the first Latina woman hired on the night route back in 2004. And the last one until now. They called her reliable, until she spoke up. Called her strong, until she asked for less overtime. Called her lucky to have a job, as if luck explained the decades she spent raising 2 kids alone, covering for coworkers, and swallowing every insult masked as a joke. Elena learned to keep her head down. Smile just enough. Do the job better than anyone and still expect to be questioned. That same pressure pressed against her chest now. A child. No ID. No guardian. On her bus. And her decision to help. Not noble. Not professional. Just suspicious. She rubbed her temples. Pictured the looks she'd get. The way some staff would stand closer to security when she walked in with him. Why didn't you just call it in, they'd ask. They never said it out loud, but Elena knew what they thought. Not her place. Not her kind. She looked back at the boy. His shoes were still damp. His face, half hidden by the hoodie, looked younger in sleep. Softer. He had no idea yet how the world would see him. What assumptions would follow him into classrooms, stores, job interviews. How quick some people would be to fear his quiet. His silence mistaken for threat. A soft knock at the side window startled her. The mechanic. Julio. He gave a small wave. She opened the doors. Everything okay? He asked. Elena nodded slowly. Found him on Jefferson. No one else around. He wouldn't talk. Julio peeked in. His eyes softened. He yours? The question hit harder than she expected. No, she said. But he's someone's. Julio nodded. You need anything? She hesitated. Then, just time. He gave a thumbs up and stepped away. No judgment. Just understanding. An hour later, the boy stirred. He sat up slowly, blinking at the bright lights. Hey, Elena said gently. You hungry? He nodded, barely. She opened her lunch bag again. This time, a banana and a granola bar. He took them wordlessly. Can I ask your name? He hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, Isaac. Elena smiled. Hi, Isaac. I'm Elena. He didn't smile back. But he looked at her now. Really looked. That was enough. They spent the next hour in silence. A quiet meal shared in a fluorescent-lit bus garage. Elena sat with her thoughts, watching Isaac eat like he didn't know when he'd eat again. She thought of her own son at that age. The time he'd been stopped for riding his bike home from a friend's. No helmet. Wrong side of the street. He was 12. They made him sit on the curb until she arrived. She remembered the look in his eyes when she got there. Not fear. Shame. For daring to be young, brown, and alone. Elena shook it off. Focused on Isaac. Is Maribel your sister? He nodded. You looking for her? A pause. Then, quietly, she said to run. She said not to wait. Elena's throat tightened. She reached out but stopped short. Let her hand rest on the seat instead. We'll find her. Okay. He looked away. But she saw it. A flicker. Maybe hope. Outside, dawn began to break. Pale light filtered in through the garage doors. The city was waking. And so was the system. Elena stood. She had to make a choice. Officially, she should report him. Let the process take over. But what if he slipped through the cracks? What if Maribel was in danger too? She thought of all the times people said nothing. Did nothing. How easy it was to explain away a child's disappearance. He must have gone home. He was probably fine. Not this time. She looked at Isaac, now sitting up, clutching the photo again. Let's go find someone who listens, she said. He followed. And for the first time that night, Elena felt something stronger than fear. Conviction. As they stepped off the bus, a morning wind swept through the depot. Elena wrapped an arm around Isaac's shoulder. Protective. Firm. She didn't know yet where they were going. But she knew this. He wouldn't face it alone. And neither would she. The waiting room of the downtown intake center always felt too cold. Not from the air conditioning, but from the walls themselves. Neutral beige paint, overhead lights that buzzed just a little too loud, and seats lined up in precise, indifferent rows. Everything about it said, stay in your place. Don't linger. Elena sat 2 seats from the end with Isaac beside her, still clutching the photo. His feet didn't touch the floor. His hoodie sleeves covered most of his hands. He hadn't spoken since they left the depot. Across from them, a receptionist typed with slow, deliberate strokes. Every now and then she glanced up, her eyes pausing on Elena for a second too long. Not smiling. Not rude. Just measuring. The security guard near the door shifted. Checked his watch. His eyes swept the room like he was expecting something to go wrong. Elena felt it in her spine. That coil of tension, tightening. She had been here before, years ago, applying for a bus driver's license. Back then, she had worn her best sweater, clutched a folder of neatly printed documents, and watched the clerk skip her for the person behind her. Twice. That same clerk now walked toward them. Can I help you? She asked, her eyes not on Elena, but on the boy. Elena stood. This child needs help. I found him alone last night on my route. He says he's looking for his sister. The woman blinked. You brought him here? Yes. A pause. You should have called the hotline. Brought an officer. Elena nodded. I know the protocol. But I didn't think waiting would help him. The woman sighed, gestured toward a clipboard. Fill this out. We'll see what we can do. Half an hour passed. Isaac stared at the photo. Elena watched the staff whisper behind the glass window. She couldn't hear what they said, but she knew the rhythm of judgment. The quiet tilt of a head. The subtle shake. The eyes that kept glancing back. She could feel them asking, "Why is she involved?" A man in a suit appeared. Not uniformed, but official. His badge said, "Manager, Emergency Child Intake." Elena Martinez? She stood. "Yes. May I speak with you privately?" She looked at Isaac. "He'll be okay for a minute." She followed the man down a hallway. Neutral tones. Office art. A quiet corner. Inside the small room, he motioned to a chair. She sat. "Thank you for bringing the child," he began. Elena waited. "But this situation creates complications." There it was. He continued, "We have procedures for unaccompanied minors. The proper response is to call police or child protective services. When an individual brings in a child directly, without proper authorization. I'm a city employee. I drive the night bus." He nodded. "We're aware. But we still have to verify the context. Ensure there was no coercion. And your presence." He paused. "My presence?" He looked uncomfortable. "It's just, not common. For employees to involve themselves to this extent. To help." He didn't answer. Elena leaned forward. "So what exactly are you suggesting?" "We're not suggesting anything. Just following protocol." She sat back. The walls in the room seemed closer now. The air thinner. "You know," she said, "I've lived in this city 42 years. I pay taxes. I raised 2 kids here. I drive your people to work while they sleep in my bus. But I still walk into rooms like this and get looked at like I don't belong." The man shifted. "That's not what this is." But Elena wasn't listening. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You don't trust me," she said. "Because I didn't follow your script. Because a brown woman bringing in a scared child at dawn doesn't fit your image of a good Samaritan." He looked down at his papers. Elena stood. "I didn't bring him here to be judged. I brought him here to be helped. If you're not ready to do that, say it plainly." She turned toward the door, her hand on the knob, when the man cleared his throat. "There's something else," he said quietly. Elena paused. "We ran the name on the back of the photo. Maribel." She turned around slowly. Her heart stuttered. She was reported missing 2 nights ago. From a women's shelter downtown. Her mother is still looking for both kids. Elena swallowed. "So she's alive?" "She might be. But it's urgent now. This boy, Isaac, he might be the only one who knows where she went." Back in the waiting area, Isaac was still in the chair. A new staffer sat nearby, trying to get him to answer questions. He looked overwhelmed. Silent. Elena walked over and knelt beside him. "Hey. I'm still here. You okay?" He nodded, barely. A voice behind her spoke. "Ma'am, we're going to need to take him to a separate room now." She stood slowly. "He doesn't talk much. Be gentle." The staff member offered a polite nod. Elena saw the look in her eyes, though. Professional. Disconnected. Isaac stood. But before he walked away, he turned to Elena. "Will you come back?" It was the first full sentence he'd spoken all morning. Elena's heart cracked. "Yes, Mijo. I'll come back. I promise." She watched him disappear down a hallway. And then she walked outside. The sun was up now. The street busy. The city moving around her like it always did. But inside her, something had shifted. She had followed the rules her whole life. Done things the right way. And still, it had never been enough to be seen as someone worth trusting. And yet, she had helped him. He had looked at her and asked her to come back. That meant more than any approval ever could. She looked up at the sky. Closed her eyes for a moment. And when she opened them, there was no doubt left in her chest. She would come back. She would not let him down. Elena returned the next morning, exactly at 8. She hadn't slept. She'd sat in the same chair by the kitchen window all night, watching the sky change from navy to gray. She couldn't risk oversleeping, couldn't risk breaking her promise. Not to Isaac. Not after the way he'd looked at her. That quiet ask, "Will you come back?" It had embedded itself in her chest. The intake center was already humming. Staff came in carrying coffee cups and keycards. No one looked twice at her. That part hurt in a different way. It wasn't just invisibility, it was practiced indifference. The kind that said, "You're not part of this world. Just passing through." She walked to the front desk. A new receptionist today, young, friendly, cheerful in the kind of way that makes you suspicious. "Hi. I'm here to check on a child I brought in yesterday. Isaac." The receptionist blinked. Tapped on her keyboard. Then picked up the phone and whispered into the receiver. A few moments passed. "You can go to conference room 2, she said. The hallway to the conference room felt longer today. Fluorescent light buzzed overhead, the kind that flickers just enough to make your thoughts skip. Elena slowed near the door. The door was unlocked when she pushed it open. Isaac was already sitting at the table, small and serious, a cup of juice in front of him. Across from him sat a woman with tired eyes and a well-worn coat. Her hair was braided tightly, hands folded on the table. Elena paused in the doorway. The woman turned. And broke into tears. "Isaac." The boy's head snapped up. He stood, and she ran to him, kneeling to hold him. They clung to each other, the silence breaking only with muffled sobs. Elena stepped back, unsure if she should witness it. But Isaac looked at her. Didn't let go of the woman's hand, but looked at Elena, and smiled. Just barely. She felt the warmth of something rising in her chest. Relief, maybe. Or release. The invisible knot she'd carried unwound just a little. After a moment, the staff member who had been waiting outside motioned for Elena to follow her into the hallway. "She's their mother," the woman said gently. She'd been looking for them for 3 days. She thought they were taken. They weren't. They ran. To find their father. Elena blinked. "Is he gone?" "Years ago." But Isaac remembered a photo. Thought he could find the street sign in it. She nodded slowly. It made sense in a child's logic. A photo, a name, and a desperate wish. "They found Maribel at a gas station," the staffer added. "Last night. Asking for change. She gave someone her mom's name." Elena closed her eyes briefly. "They're together now?" "Yes." "And the system?" The staffer hesitated. "It's a case now. But at least they're not lost." Later, Elena stood in the hallway as the family was escorted out. The mother walked ahead, holding Maribel's hand. Isaac lingered. He turned to Elena. Reached into his pocket. And handed her the photo. "I don't need it now," he said. She took it, her fingers trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. Isaac nodded. "You're the only one who saw me." He turned and ran to catch up with his mother. Elena stood there a while, staring down at the photo. The girl with the gap-toothed smile. The faint pencil scrawl on the back. Something about it all felt bigger than one night, one shift, one decision. That evening, Elena sat in her bus again. Her usual route. The same cold wind through cracked windows. Same silence between stops. But everything had changed. The seat behind her felt warmer. And in her jacket pocket, a photo with a name on the back reminded her, she had mattered. Because sometimes, it's not the system that makes the difference. It's the one person who refuses to look away. And this wasn't the end. She didn't know it yet, but tomorrow would bring a call. Not from a supervisor. From someone she'd never met. A name she'd only seen once. And it would change everything again. So she sat there, watching the city roll by, hand resting lightly on her jacket pocket. Ready. 3 days later, Elena was sweeping the floor of the depot when her name echoed through the intercom. She thought she'd misheard it. Ms. Martinez, please report to dispatch. Immediately. Dispatch never called her like that. No last-minute reroute. No shift change. Just, her name. She wiped her hands on her jacket and made her way down the corridor, boots echoing on the concrete floor. The office door was already ajar. Inside sat her supervisor, and next to him, a man in a gray suit with an envelope in his hand. Elena froze. The man stood and extended his hand. Ms. Martinez. I'm with the mayor's office. She shook it, slowly. I'm here because of something you did. A child. A decision. A night that could have gone so differently. He set the envelope on the desk. There's going to be a new initiative. A pilot program, community response liaisons embedded in the transit system. People who actually notice what others ignore. Elena blinked. Why me? Because Isaac gave us your name. Because the mother did too. Because when they tell this story, the story of how 2 kids didn't fall through the cracks, they start with you. Her supervisor cleared his throat. We'd like you to help shape the training. Even lead some of it. Elena sat down slowly. She was used to being passed over. To being necessary but never acknowledged. But now, they wanted her not just for what she did, but for who she was. That night, Elena drove the route again. Jefferson Avenue was as cracked and dim as ever. The corners still held shadows. The riders still kept their eyes down. But she saw differently now. Not just danger in the quiet. But lives. Choices. Crossroads. She passed the stop where she first saw Isaac. Slowed a little. Just a beat. And kept going. A week later, she found a folded note taped to her locker. In kid handwriting, uneven but deliberate. Tell the next kid you see that I made it home. And tell them not to give up. Because someone like you is out there. In a city that moves too fast, in a world that forgets too easily, Elena's shift never really ended. It just changed. She was still tired. Still ignored by some. Still doubted. But no longer unseen. Not by those who needed her most. Not by those who now followed her lead. Sometimes, the smallest act becomes a lifeline. A bus driver sees a child. A child finds hope. A city shifts. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to believe they matter. Someone out there needs to be seen.